Welcome to Four Foundations, fitness in an industry built on bull. This is your refuge for real results. Today's video is going to be the first in a series of videos explaining what I call the four fitness foundations, the namesake of my channel. So when it comes to navigating your fitness journey, these four foundations are going to be like the north, south, east, and west on your compass. Understanding and implementing these four foundations is all that you need to achieve your fitness goals. Whether you are a complete beginner or you're someone who's been trying to work on your fitness for a while and you just aren't seeing the results that you want, the four foundations will still apply to you. Okay, whether your goals are simply to feel better and to age gracefully, or to get your dream body and make your ex regret every decision that they ever made, the four foundations will still apply to you. Now, before I tell you what the foundations are, I want to explain why I came up with them. I think this context is important. For someone who's beginning their fitness journey, and even for people who have already begun but who just aren't that knowledgeable yet, it can be very difficult to know what to do in order to achieve your goals. Okay, there's plenty of information available on the topic, which is actually part of the problem. Okay, given the sheer amount of information there is related to fitness on the internet and social media, it can be hard for somebody who's not knowledgeable to sort out the good information from the bad, or to sort out the good information that simply doesn't apply to them yet at the current stage of their journey. There's a lot of good information, for instance, that applies to people who are more advanced or more specialized in their fitness that might not apply to a beginner or to someone who simply doesn't have their foundations in check. This is the sort of advice that if a beginner tries to follow it, they'll just needlessly overcomplicate things and make it harder for themselves. The reality is, achieving your fitness goals is far simpler than the excess of information on the topic would have you believe. You don't need to have the knowledge of a sports physiologist or the training schedule of a professional athlete in order to look and feel your best. This is why I formulated the four foundations, is to break fitness down into simple, easily understood principles that anyone can grasp and implement into their own lives to start making progress towards their healthiest, best looking, best feeling self. So let's just get into it. What are the four fitness foundations? Okay. Train smart, eat well, rest hard, and repeat. And in deference to the fourth foundation, I will say it again. Train smart, eat well, rest hard, and repeat. Each video in the following series is going to be focused on one of these foundations, explaining what the principles mean in theory, and then using concrete examples on how to implement the principles into your own life. So let's just get started with the first foundation. What does it mean to train smart? Why not just say train hard like most people do? Spoiler alert, training hard is part of what it means to train smart, and I'll explain why that is in a bit, but there's more to it than that. First and foremost, training smart means training for your goals. Okay? Forgive me if this seems obvious, but the amount of people I see in the gym who are just kind of wandering around playing hopscotch on the equipment with no real direction in mind suggests that I should probably address this issue. You paid in the form of money for your gym membership, and you are paying in the form of time when you're in the gym. Okay, you want to make the best use out of that money and time. You want to step into the gym with a purpose in mind, and you want to focus your time on the exercises that help you achieve that purpose. If you don't know what those exercises are, no worries. We're going to get into that a little later when we talk about the implementation of this foundation. But there are some general principles I want to go over and some myths I want to dispel before we get into the specific practical advice. So what I want you to do as you begin to make this transition into a more fit lifestyle is to recognize that this change starts in your mind first. It starts with your perception. And one perception I want you to consider adopting is a specific way of thinking about your own body. I want you to think about your body as an advanced machine that is designed to grow and respond to whatever stresses it gets exposed to. And I want you to adopt this framing because I think the average human takes their body for granted, right? If you had a piece of technology that could do everything your body does, okay, a piece of technology that you could just put your consciousness inside and control with just your mind, that was able to adapt in dynamic ways to the stresses that you expose it to, you would think this was the most amazing piece of technology in existence. And yet, how do most of us actually treat our bodies? Okay, we take them for granted. Most people won't spend even 2 or 3 hours a week. Okay, that's literally all you need if you train efficiently to keep your body looking and functioning at its best. Okay, 2 to 3 hours. And most people won't do that. And those same people will spend time and money to maintain their car and their electronic devices. Okay, this is backward. You can buy a new phone, you can buy a new car. Barring some technological breakthrough, you only get one body and you only get one life to know what it feels like to live inside the best version of that body. Anyway, I digress, okay? I'll try not to go on too many side rants or tangents. No promises though, because there is so much that I need to get off my chest when it comes to fitness. The amount of misinformation that the industry and the culture pushes, it's actually infuriating sometimes, okay? There's no reason everybody in the world should not be their fittest selves. But the fitness industry and fitness culture gatekeep, and they gatekeep hard so that they can continue to milk ignorant consumers. And I'm already doing it again. I'm going on another tangent. So okay, let's focus. The main point I wanted to get across here is that your body has this amazing ability to adapt to the stresses that it gets exposed to. This beautiful fact of nature is what we are relying on to frame our training. Essentially what it means is if you want your body to change in a certain way, you need to expose your body to the stresses that force it to make those changes. That is essentially what training is. So to illustrate this, let's think about the prototypical example of someone who's getting into fitness. Let's say you want to lose a few pounds, get a little more toned so you look better in your clothes or out of your clothes, I suppose. How does a person train smart for this goal? Well, as a brief aside first, and I know I was literally just talking about how I don't want to go on too many tangents, but I feel like this is important to address, okay? There's this idea that floats around in people's minds that you'll occasionally hear somebody actually express out loud, which is that people with this goal, people who work out with the goal of looking better, are somehow vain or shallow. Okay, perhaps you've even thought this yourself or expressed this sentiment yourself. And I want to get this out of the way right now that this is bullshit. Okay, I plan to do a whole video on this specific topic in the future because I think it's a barrier that prevents a lot of people from starting their fitness journeys. For now, I'll just say that it's bullshit. It's an excuse that people use to shame those who have started their fitness journeys so that they can feel better about themselves for not having done so. Are there rare circumstances where there are people with intense body dysmorphia for whom wanting to look good is actually a problem? Yes, okay, but this is not the majority of people. Most people are just trying to look good to attract a partner or to be more attractive to the partner that they already have because, you know, they value that relationship. And taking good care of your mental and physical health is one of the best things you can do for someone you're in a relationship with. So fuck off with this people who just work out to look good or shallow bullshit. Again, I'm going to make a whole video addressing that topic in the future, but for now, I digress. So how does one train smart for the goal of looking better? Well, this is where we have to drop some knowledge and dispel a few myths. Okay, a lot of people, especially ladies, have this false idea in their mind that in order to get more toned, they need to spend hours on the Stairmaster or the treadmill burning calories. Okay, among the younger generations, this myth is starting to be dispelled, I think. But I still encounter a lot of women who seem to think that this is the way to train in order to achieve their ideal look. Okay, cardio bunnies, we call them, because they also seem to think that they need to eat like bunny rabbits in order to lose weight. Also not true, but we'll get into that in the next video when we talk about the next fitness foundation, eating well. So I don't want to trash cardio too much. The heart is the most important muscle in the body, and so you want to be doing some sort of cardio just for the sake of your health, and doing cardio in moderation can help you burn some extra calories or to help you lose weight on a slightly higher food intake. But if your goal is to lose weight and keep it off, okay, if your goal is to achieve your ideal body and keep it, then the primary focus of your training should be geared not towards doing excessive cardio, but instead toward building a solid foundation of muscle. Why? So many reasons it's hard to even know where to start. First of all, real quick, let's dispel another myth. And this myth is another one that tends to affect the ladies in the gym. I swear I'm not trying to hate on the female gym pop. Later in this video, we're going to discuss a big training mistake where men are the biggest culprit. But I just have to say it before we go forward. Ladies, no. No, you are not going to get too bulky or too masculine if you put on a layer or two of muscle. What's actually going to happen is that muscle is going to accentuate your body's natural shape. So think about it. What is your body? Okay, it's a vehicle that allows you to move around. What is it that's actually causing that movement? It's your muscles. So your muscles are your body. Okay, your fat is basically just pockets of energy storage, pockets of excess fuel for your body to use if it needs it. But it's your muscle that gives you shape. It's muscle that tones your body so that whatever fat you do have sits on you in a way that accentuates your shape instead of obscuring it. So that's the first point. You're not going to achieve your ideal shape if you don't grow muscle, because muscle is literally the stuff that makes your shape. Your bone structure determines your shape, but it's the muscle laying over top of that structure that actually fills the shape in. And unless you're taking male hormones, you are not going to grow an overly masculine upper body, even if you were to try. So let's not be using that as an excuse for shying away from the weights. And aside from accentuating your body's natural shape, adding a solid foundation of muscle is also going to aid tremendously in fat loss. In fact, I'd argue that muscle is one of the most important factors for ensuring long-term sustainable fat loss. Why is that? Well, because muscle is expensive. Okay, your body has to burn a lot of energy, a lot of calories in order to build and maintain muscle. Those are calories that your body might otherwise be storing as fat. And the more muscle you have, the faster your body will burn through your excess energy storage, your fat, in order to keep those muscles in working order. So, in summary, if your goal is to achieve your ideal body, then the goal of your training should be to build muscle. That time you're spending in the gym, you should be spending trying to build muscle. So how do we train to build muscle? Well, like I said earlier, your body is a machine designed to grow and respond to the stresses that it gets exposed to. And if you want your body to change in a certain way, you need to expose your body to the stresses that force it to make those changes. So in short, what this means is if you want to build muscle, you need to make your body believe that it needs muscle. Okay, if you're a guy who wants wider shoulders or bigger arms, then you need to make your body believe that it needs wider shoulders and bigger arms. If you're a girl who wants some bigger, more shapely glutes, then you need to make your body believe that it needs them. That's where weight training comes in. Forcing your muscles to flex and extend while facing some level of resistance is the best way to make your body believe that it needs those muscles to grow. And the easiest way to apply that resistance is simply to lift weights. So this is where I anticipate a barrier for some people, because if you don't know anything about weightlifting or weight training, where the fuck do you even start, right? You're trying to look this shit up online and it seems like there's so much information that it's overwhelming, especially for a beginner. Okay, which exercises are you going to do? How often are you going to do them? How much variation should you have in your exercise selection? How many sessions should you do in a week? How many sets should you do per exercise in a session? Okay, how many reps should you do per set? How should you organize your training week? Should you train full body 3 times a week? Should you do upper body, lower body split 4 times per week? Should you do push-pull legs 6 times per week? Or, should you give each muscle group its own day like the old school bodybuilders? How should you handle your long-term training? Should you do undulating periodization or block periodization? Should you do program deloads or take intuitive rest breaks? Some of you probably don't even know what half this shit means, and it all just sounds overwhelming. So let me cut a path through this jungle of excess information by telling you a simple truth, which is that none of the training factors that I just listed above really matter all that much. Again, especially not if your goal is just to look good and feel good and be all around healthy. Okay, if you're trying to be a power lifter or you're training to play a specific sport at a high level, then yes, now your training needs to be more specific. But again, the example that I'm using for this video is the 99% of people who are in the gym just to look better. So none of the jumble of training factors I mentioned above matter all that much. There is, however, one training variable that really does matter when it comes to muscle growth, okay? One variable that you cannot get wrong, even if you're getting everything else right, or you will see no progress. And that variable is training intensity. So how do we measure training intensity in weight training? Especially as a beginner, you might feel that an exercise you're doing is very intense, but in reality, your muscles are actually just getting warmed up and you have a lot left in them. Or an exercise might be intense in a cardiovascular sense, so it has your heart rate high and you're breathing heavy and you're probably sweating a lot too. But none of those things actually mean that your muscles are getting worked very hard. Okay, your heart might be getting worked hard and your lungs, but not the skeletal muscles that you're trying to shape up. So in weight training, we use something called, and it might sound complicated, but it's actually really not. I'll explain. Okay, we use what's called proximity to failure, aka how close you're taking your weight training exercises to failure. So let's talk about failure. Okay, what does it mean? What does training to failure actually mean? And forgive me if this is obvious to some people, but I don't know exactly what level of knowledge people are coming into these videos with, so I want to assume that somebody watching this might know nothing at all. So to define failure, let's first talk about what failure is not. Okay, failure is not when an exercise starts to burn and so you just decide, okay, that hurts, I'm going to stop now. Okay, that's voluntary failure. But the definition of failure that we're going to be working with is the point at which you could not perform another repetition of an exercise with proper technique, even if your life depended on it. Okay, it's the point at which even if I put a gun to your head and said, do another rep or you die, you would still not be able to do it. So when I say that to stimulate muscle growth, you need to be training in a close proximity to failure, I mean that on every exercise you do, okay, on every set, not including your warm-up sets, you need to be approaching the point where you could not do another rep even if you gave it your all. And it's important to mention here that you need to be approaching failure, okay, not necessarily reaching failure. There are some exercises where it's downright dangerous to try to push to failure. If you're doing heavy barbell lifts, for instance, then make sure you either have a competent spotter present or that you're performing the exercises inside of a power rack, with the safety set to the appropriate height to catch the weight in the case that you actually reach failure. And the second caveat I want to make is simply to emphasize that failure is when you cannot perform another rep with proper technique. Okay, there are many exercises where you can screw with your technique a little bit in order to squeeze out another rep or two. Generally speaking, this is a bad idea and a good way to get injured. Okay, yes, on those last few reps before failure, you might have a bit of form deviation because you're pushing close to your limits. Okay, that's fine. But if your form gets so out of whack that you're now lifting with a completely different muscle than the group that you're supposed to be targeting with that exercise, then stop, okay? You already hit failure. Now, with those caveats made, I want to stress again the importance of training in a close proximity to failure because it really can't be overstated, okay? I could give you the perfect training routine and the perfect nutrition plan to fit with your body type and your lifestyle and your preferences. But if you're in the gym just kind of going through the motions and not taking your exercises anywhere near failure, don't expect to see any results, okay? Your body is smart when it comes to energy expenditure. Muscle is expensive, takes a lot of calories, a lot of energy to build and maintain muscle. And so your body is not going to spend that energy unless it feels like it really needs it. Again, if you want to grow muscle, you need to make your body believe that it needs it. Weight training and getting close to muscle failure is how you do that. So that's what it means to train smart for muscle growth, okay? To resistance train your muscles, performing working sets, okay? A set is just a group of repetitions, and you want to take all of your sets for each exercise that you do to 1 or 2 repetitions shy of failure. And a good way to judge how close you are to failure is to every once in a while actually push to failure, but only on exercises where it's safe to do so. So machines, dumbbell exercises. Do not try to push to failure on barbell lifts or anything where the weight is going to crush you if you can't get it up. So basically, to sum it up, train hard. You might be wondering then why I don't call this fitness foundation Train Hard, okay, instead of Train Smart. Am I just trying to be different? Yes. Because while I think training hard is important, I think the emphasis that general fitness culture puts on training hard can actually be detrimental, okay, for 2 reasons. First of all, it creates a false barrier for normal people who are trying to get healthy. Okay, if you're like the average person who's a little or maybe a lot out of shape and you're looking to get into fitness, what are you likely to think when you hear about these Hollywood actors, for instance, who go through these insane body transformations and talk about how hardcore they had to be to get their training, and how restrictive they had to be about their nutrition? You know, oh, I trained for 4 hours a day, 6 days a week, eating nothing but chicken, broccoli, and rice for 6 months straight, okay? What's the average person going to think when they hear that? 2 hours a day, 6 days a week, and I don't get to eat any of the food that I like, and I have to do this for months on end, not to mention everything else I've got going on in life? Hey, fuck that. It's impossible. Okay, why even try? This false perception that fitness has to be hardcore acts as a huge mental barrier for people to get started. Okay, the truth that you can start with a moderate 3 or even 2 day a week routine, train hard for those sessions and start to see results, and then start to ingrain the habits that will allow you to maintain those results and build upon them in the future is a far better message, but it doesn't sound as hardcore, and so you don't hear much motivational content expressing that fact, even though it is a fact, okay? The truth is there is no reason everyone should not be fit. It's actually that simple. Anyone can do it. Fitness culture gatekeeps, okay, by giving this general impression that you have to have this hardcore mentality to go to the gym and pick up heavy things and put them back down again. Okay, yeah, you have to push hard when you're training, and you have to be disciplined to go on days when you aren't really feeling super motivated. But you, as a human, are perfectly capable of doing both of those things. And in fact, as you learn what your body's capable of, and as you start to see the results that working out actually gets you, you start to enjoy pushing hard in your sessions. And that enjoyment combined with the positive results becomes its own continuous source of motivation. I know it's hard to kind of put yourself there when you might not currently be feeling motivated, but it's true. That overwhelming feeling of resistance that prevents you from getting to the gym and just making the progress that you know you're capable of. Okay, that feeling that tells you, oh, maybe I'll just start tomorrow or next week. Or wouldn't it be nice to just stay home instead? Okay, that feeling goes away. I know it's hard to fathom it if you haven't been there before, but it's true. You start to look forward to your workouts instead of dreading them. If you're logging your workouts properly, which is a surprisingly easy thing to do, you don't need some fancy app. You just need a notepad, or I just use the notes in my calendar on my phone. But yeah, if you're logging your workouts with the goal of trying to gradually get stronger over time by doing more repetitions or more weight, then you actually get excited to test your limits on every session, okay, to see if you can match or increase your previous performance. It becomes an addicting game, but instead of like a video game where at the end of the day you have nothing to show for it, you instead have this awesome, healthy, attractive looking body that just feels better to live inside. And the idea that the average person can't experience this, that it takes some kind of special hardcore person and some insane, impossible training plan that requires you to live in the gym, it's just wrong. It's gatekeeping, and the gate is made of bullshit. Don't fall for it. Okay. Second reason that this kind of bravado that permeates the fitness industry is detrimental is because for those whom it doesn't act as a barrier, it instead acts as a dangerous, unsustainable guiding mentality. Okay, I mentioned before that there are a lot of people in the gym who are just going through the motions, not training in a close proximity to failure, and therefore not training hard enough to see results. And yes, this is a problem, but there's another problem that exists on the other end of the spectrum. There are people out there who are training way too hard or way too much or both. And this is where We're going to bring some balance to our gender-based criticism in this video. I called out the female gym pop twice earlier, but let's be real, it's usually men in the gym who are making this particular mistake, okay? Pushing every set to failure instead of trying to leave 1 or 2 reps in the tank. Again, you should push to failure once in a while to gauge your capacity, but you do not need to push to failure on every single set. And then the second mistake, okay, the worst mistake to be honest, is just doing too much, okay? Spending too much time in the gym, doing too many sets. Okay, if you push to failure all the time, that's not necessarily going to kill your progress if you're limiting the amount of sets that you're doing. But a lot of guys are out here pushing every set to failure and beyond and doing like 20 plus sets for a muscle group in a single session. Okay, I don't even do that much in a week. Now, I'm not here to judge, okay? I've been there, okay? Your girlfriend just broke up with you and, you know, after a few weeks or months of moping, you've decided that enough is enough. And now here you find yourself at the gym, you know, hoodie pulled down halfway over your face, prepared to go to war with your demons, hoping that the battle might forge you into a greater version of yourself with a revenge body that will make your ex come crawling back to you. Okay, I get it. I've been there. 3 hours a day, 6 days a week crew. I've fucking been there. You will see progress like this. And if you've got your other 3 foundations in check, it will be fast progress. It will not be lasting progress. Okay, you do not build muscle in the gym. You provide your body the stimulus, the signal to build muscle in the gym, but that's not where the muscle growth actually happens. The growth takes place outside of the gym when you're providing your body with the nutrients and the rest that it needs. And we'll talk about those things when we get to the other foundations. But to sum up this point about training too hard, what you need to understand is that your body has a limited capacity to recover and grow from training. That capacity is determined by many factors, again, not least of which are 2 of the other fitness foundations, but nevertheless, it is possible to train so hard and so much that you exceed your capacity to recover. And at that point, all you're doing in the gym is further breaking yourself down. You will literally start to lose muscle if you do this. Okay, you might be at war with your demons, but you can't forget the fact that you are a mortal human being. Okay, if you do forget this fact, I promise you will be reminded, and it won't be in a way that you like. Okay, if you're lucky, your mortality will manifest in the form of burnout. And burnout, I think, is best conceptualized as your body's attempt to assert executive control over your psychological state because it's determined that you are essentially on a path to self-destruction. And you'll experience this as just a complete tanking of your motivation, as well as probably a desire to binge on all the foods you've been depriving yourself of if your nutrition has been as unrealistically strict as your training. And that's what you'll experience if you're lucky. Okay, if you're unlucky, your willpower will remain strong and you'll keep going to the gym, keep training too hard, breaking yourself down until you get to the point where you inevitably get injured, in which case you'll be forced to stop training, whether you like it or not, which really sucks because you're probably addicted to the gym at that point. And I know, some people who hear this think that sounds like a strange problem to have, being too addicted to the gym. But after all, most people have the opposite problem and don't want to go to the gym at all. But it is a thing. Like I said, I've been there and I have made that mistake, and I see these fucking young guys in the gym making all the same mistakes that I made. So hopefully they watch this. You want your training to be hard, yes, but you don't want to be doing so much work in the gym that you are exceeding your capacity to recover. You want your training to be sustainable so that all of the health and aesthetic benefits and general life benefits can be sustained. So the foundation is called Train Smart because you need to find a balance between training hard enough to make your body believe that it needs to grow muscle, but not so hard that you exceed your capacity to recover. Where exactly the sweet spot is, again, will depend on a number of factors and will likely be slightly different for each individual, and that's something that you have to experiment with to learn for yourself. As a general rule, for people starting out, 8 to 10 sets per muscle group per week is a good ballpark. So that's 8 to 10 sets, with each set being taken in a close proximity to failure, okay, per muscle group per week. Okay, that does not include your warm-up sets. So to give a concrete example, let's say you only train 3 days a week. And I shouldn't even really use the word only. Okay, 3 days a week is plenty, and more days per week is not necessarily better unless the amount of days you're doing is literally 0, in which case, yeah, obviously train more days than that. But let's say you're doing 3 days a week, right? You probably want to do 3 sets per muscle group per session. And you probably want to do mostly compound exercises that train multiple muscle groups at a time, like squats, hinges, rows, and presses, and all of their variations. And that way you're basically training your whole body every session in the most time efficient way possible. So that would mean you'd be doing 3 sessions per week, okay, 4 exercises per session, 3 sets per exercise, not including your warm-up sets. Okay, each set performed within a couple reps shy of failure. And if you're looking for a program to follow to make this whole process simpler, again, check the first link in the description to pick up a ready-to-go plug-and-play training program. This isn't just a program that shows you a list of exercises. This is an idiot-proof, zero prior knowledge of fitness-proof guide that will instantly have you doing more effective training than 99% of people at your commercial gym, all for a price cheaper than a single session with a trainer at that same commercial gym. And the program also comes with a free nutrition guide, so check that out if you want an effective training program. But again, just to summarize the main takeaway here, okay, regardless of how much you train or how perfect your program is, if you're not training in close proximity to failure, you will not see gains. But if you are training in a close proximity to failure, then you need to make sure you're not doing so many sets that you're exceeding your capacity to recover. 8 to 10 sets per week is a good ballpark for most people. You can do a little less than that, but you might not see your best gains. You can do a little more than that, but you might be getting into diminishing returns at that point. And if you do too much more, you will exceed your capacity to recover and you will actually start to lose muscle. Now, I just talked a lot about your capacity to recover from training and how that's affected by a number of factors. So in the next video in this series, we're going to talk about one of the most important of those factors, which is also our next fitness foundation, okay, eating well. Thanks for watching. Links in the description for training programs or to set up a custom consult call with me or to inquire about personal one-on-one coaching. Hope you got some value from this video and I'll see you in the next one.